Welcome back, Sparklers, to another episode of Ignite Your Spark. I'm your host, Kim Duff-Selby. Thank you for tuning in every week for inspiration and motivation. Oh, perhaps I'm giving you ideas and ways to step outside of your comfort zone because my goal is to help you live a happier, yes, healthier, purposeful life. I am very grateful today to my guest, Dr. Neha Sangwan, and I may have pronounced her name.
No, you said it perfectly.
Is joining me. And her credentials are like, whoa, off the chart. She's the CEO and founder of Intuitive Intelligence. She is an internal medicine physician, an international speaker, and a corporate communication expert. And she is an author. She addresses the root cause of stress, miscommunication, and interpersonal conflict. She has consulted with organizations such as the American Heart Association, Kaiser, American Express, and Google. She's been a TEDx speaker. Her latest book is called Powered by Me, From Burned Out to Fully Charged at Work and in Life. And I know we all want to be fully charged every day, and we can't always be that way. And I just want to share with you that I met Neha, 6 years ago. I don't really know the time, but we were taking an improv workshop intensive for a weekend. And here are all of us goofballs, sort of just out there. And here's this incredibly gorgeous, talented, smart woman who was able to be a goofball too. But you had so much to share. I remember all of us going, oh my gosh, she's so smart. The things she said is so much better than what we said. Anyway, welcome to Ignite Your Spark, and thank you for coming.
I'm glad to be here and great to be reconnected.
Yeah, it's so fun, especially when you're reconnected through something which was sort of a bonding experience, even though you're only with these people for a weekend, not even, the whole weekend. And you're just sharing a lot of goofiness when you're doing improv, and it's really helping you in so many ways that you don't realize until you're faced in a situation where you have to kind of step out and deal with something that you had not expected.
Yeah, definitely. It's all about self-trust. It's all about building our self-trust, and then that self-trust allows us to navigate the unknown and switch, pivot and change quickly. I think it's a lot of what the world needs. So I'm glad we did it a few years ago. Hopefully it's given us a leg up on all the pace of change that's going on.
Oh, it is. Well, I think it has. I think I've taught improv and workshops to women, and everybody's a little hesitant at first, and then once they do it and get into it, I totally see a change when someone lets go of their perceived notion of themselves and steps into another way of being.
Yeah.
Before we go into your story and your book, I'd like to ask my guests this question at the beginning of each episode. How do you ignite your spark?
So I think the way that I receive intuition, the way that I get lit up and get excited is really through human connection. So surrounding myself with people who celebrate my joys and I can celebrate them, but it's really whenever I'm down or whenever I need to recharge or reconnect, it's through surrounding myself with people that when I look in their eyes and I've forgotten whether I can do something or whether I believe in myself, I look in their eyes and I can just see the reflection of them believing in me. So it's definitely the invisible bridges between our hearts.
See, it's those kind of words that light me up. And I feel like I wish I could speak like that, because you are able to take what someone is feeling or what we all are feeling and articulate it so beautifully. Thank you. That is just a lovely answer. And I really get that when I'm looking at someone and they are reflecting back at me what I am giving them, perhaps. We don't take time to do that enough.
Yeah. Well, I think we're so busy, right? We're in a world that tells us that faster is better and you have to do more with less, and success requires struggle, and we're always behind. And when you're behind, how can you be present?
Well, I think that's part of it. We don't actively listen as much as we should. And part of that is because of all the social media and all of those quick moving parts, scroll, 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 that those of us who have a tendency towards that active squirrel brain, it's even worse when you engage in that way. And for me, doing a podcast is a great way to be present, to stop and connect. And I love how you said that. All right. Thank you for that answer. And I know, are you still a practicing doctor?
So I have a private practice now. I used to work in the hospital where I would, when you come into the emergency department and someone's going to be admitted, I was the doctor that would come down and admit them and carry them through their stay. Now what I do is I have my own private practice, and now I merge my experience in engineering, which is root cause problem solving, internal medicine, and executive coaching. And I work with leaders, senior leaders, their teams, and full company wellness programs, where I combine people's ability to communicate or inability to communicate and how it makes them physically ill. I use my understanding of business strategy to coach the CEOs and their leadership team. And then I take on the entire company as a company wellness program. So the private practice that I do now is more about, I know where the intersection of our physical health meets our mental, emotional, social, spiritual health. So what I mean by that is, the simplest way to think about it is, let's say somebody goes in to see their doctor because they have chest tightness. What a doctor often does is runs an EKG, takes some blood work, maybe does a stress test, or perhaps, depending on their history, does an ultrasound and checks how their heart is beating. Then the doctor comes out and says something to this person who's struggling with chest tightness, like, "Good news, you're doing fine, nothing's wrong." Now the patient is sitting there thinking, okay, I should be happy about this, except what about the chest tightness? And so they leave. And I think that what my dream would be for doctors to say instead would be, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is your heart, the electrical rhythm of your heart on your EKG looks great. Your blood works great. You didn't have a heart attack. And your heart's pumping fine. Here's the bad news. I think there's something unresolved on a mental, emotional, social, or spiritual level that's showing up in your physical body to try to get your attention. Do you have any idea what that might be?
Well, that's the dream. That is the dream for me, to work with a physician like that. Last year, recently went through some of those kind of things. I had some unexplained, like pain kind of stuff, did the whole barium test to look at my insides. Oh, you're fine. You're fine. I'm like, well, no, I'm not fine, but I don't know that mine was mental as much as perhaps some physical response to that virus going around that lingered in my body. But I think that so many of the issues of today, whether it's headaches or gut aches, the more people I talk to have gut issues, of course it's stress related. But the doctors today, not including yourself, they get us in and out. 15 minutes here, you've got 15 minutes. I'm on Medicare now. Let me ask all the questions. Do you have rugs in your house? You do? Medicare doesn't like that. Well, I'm like, okay, let's look at me as the person. Dr. Neha, I mean, you look at a person when you talk.
Well, I would say it's even bigger than that. So I would say, yes, I look at much more than just the physical person. So I look at, your body, your mind, your heart, right? What do you want? How are you interacting? So there's me. And then there's our relationships. And then there's the world in which we live. So your environment is really important. It does affect you. But there's me, we, world, right? And so anytime you're trying to solve something complicated, you want to understand how it's happening on all three levels. Let me talk to you a little bit about what I would say to your listeners who might be struggling with ailments like you were saying. Yours was your gut. They say they're stressed, they're having headaches, they can't sleep at night, right? Any of these issues. So the first thing you have to do is get a clean bill of health. That's your first job, because these can all be symptoms or signals of something bigger that's medical.
Mm-hmm.
If you get a clean bill of health, but you're still not feeling well, what I used to ask my patients was 5 questions. So in the hospital, the night before I would discharge them, what I learned on my own burnout stress leave was that the research shows that stress causes or exacerbates more than 80% of all illness. So it makes sense. I mean, my intuition tells me it might even be higher than that, but we'll just leave it with the research. So if stress causes or exacerbates more than 80% of illness, why are we not starting with what's at the root of your stress? Oftentimes when I would ask my colleagues this, what they would say to me is, Neha, just like you wouldn't order a diagnostic test that you didn't know what to do with the result, why would you ask a question that you didn't know what to do with the answer? Mm. And this is a lot of what ended up leading me into coaching, because there's a way in which curiosity, as a doctor, I'm prescribing a lot. That's people want me to give them an answer. But the real dance and magic in our world of personalized medicine, each person's biology is different. And so the dance happens in the exchange. And so now that I'm an executive coach where I'm listening and I'm curious and I'm asking questions, I understand not just physical from doctoring, but mental, emotional, social, spiritual. When you put those together, you can see the intersection where each of those professions individually may not understand the connection. And so there was 5 questions that I used to ask my patients the night before they got discharged to help them get to the root of their stress. And so I call this the awareness prescription. So question number 1, okay, let's just say someone came in with a heart attack. So why this? So heart attack. Why did this part of your body break down, right? So if it's a headache, right? Why this? Why your mind? Why is that what's hurting you? Why now? Question number 2. Since, why not 3 years ago? Why not 2 weeks from now? What is it? What's the message your body needed you to get in this moment that it shut down and you're in the hospital with me? So why now? The question number 3 is, since hindsight's 2020, what signals might you have missed that make perfect sense now? What signals, what clues, what patterns that may not have made sense, right, are crystal clear. And that helps people pick up these clues for next time so they can pick it up sooner. Question number 4, what else in your life needs to be healed? And question number 5, if you spoke from the heart, what would you say? And so you can use this for a relationship breaking down. You can use this for a dilemma in your family. You can use this for a business decision. You can use this for whatever you're struggling with, and allow your, you were speaking about igniting your spark, and what ignites your spark. And this is where these types of questions, we should trust our intuition, and whatever moves through us is the right answer. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a bit of, framing the questions, and then there's a lot of trusting our own intuition. Yeah. So my patients they knew why they were sick. They knew why now. They just really got to the root of what they needed to know.
Those are brilliant questions. And I hope there are any doctors out there listening that they implement that into their 15 minutes with their PCP people with their,
or maybe even as follow-up questions. Give these follow-up questions on the, 15 minutes, I just have to say, is not fair. Like, nobody gets to win.
Right.
A patient doesn't feel satisfied. A doctor doesn't feel satisfied I mean, we didn't spend our entire youth in school while everyone else was, having fun and on the beach and young and, doing all this. We didn't spend our time and energy doing this if we didn't want to help people. There's something called moral injury, which is essentially like our deep optimism and hope to help humanity gets put into a system that makes it very hard to be able to help people. And so there's many of us that have chosen to do different things. But that takes a lot of courage to do what I did. When you leave a traditional system, it's almost like you have to go out in the jungle and pave a path because people don't know how to pay you. They don't know how to relate to you. Are you a doctor in a hospital? Oh, you work with private clients and you get them off medications, not on them? Like, wow, I've never heard of that. And so people don't fully understand it. And so it takes time for this to happen. But I have to agree with you. We're in a system that, is really on the brink of falling apart and needing to be reimagined.
Well, I agree with that. And I think you are so wise, obviously beyond the scope of the traditional medical system. And I have a question about you trusting your intuition. Is it something that you always had? Or, I know on your website, you say the good Indian girl, you sort of followed along. But did your intuition ever say to you, maybe this isn't for me? Or I know it did eventually after you went through your own burnout, but
Right.
were you able to access your own intuition as a young girl?
Yeah, I absolutely was. And what's interesting here is oftentimes the way intuition comes to us is through physical sensations in our body, dropping in like thoughts that just kind of come in like, oh, I better check on something because, I all of a sudden I'm in the middle of doing something and I get this, insight. So it's like insights. But what I'd say the most important thing that I would tell people is pay attention to children. Children are so in tune with their body. They know, they know when they need a nap, they know when they need a poop, they know when they need to be fed, and they respond. They're so in exchange with the communication in their bodies. We're the ones who think we're getting inconvenienced. Like, now you want to eat now? Like, it's 2 a.m. Like, I want to sleep. So we fight that and we almost beat it out of them. We tell them to be polite. Right now, you sit in the meeting, you do the thing, you are in public, don't listen to your body right now. And so when kids are young, they are very much in tune with their body, and they even allow emotions to just move right through them. They can be playing with bubbles and laughing, one moment, and then see something else and just move right into anger, upset, whatever it is. They don't have all the invisible barriers that we have constructed to protect ourselves. And what's interesting is as we protect ourselves, we also lose our connection to when we're trying to, safeguard or buffer, where we don't want to feel disappointment, or we don't want to upset anybody else, or we want to be societally correct. We now have put ourselves in very pretty boxes, but we've also kind of shunned our ability to listen. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, when I was young, I absolutely did listen. I was 3 months old. And so my parents are immigrants. They came here after having an arranged marriage in India in 1965. And they moved to the US. And I am the middle daughter of 3. And so my grandmother came, because they were both working full time, came to take care of my older sister and myself. Well, while she was here, my grandfather got a job in Africa with the United Nations. He got stationed there to help their people create a plan for agriculture that could support them. He calls my grandmother and says, I need you here. I can do the work of the United Nations, but there's a whole social thing that goes on here that you need to take care of. So she scooped me up. I'm 3 months old, took me with her for 2 years, and I lived happily with them. Once I'm 2 years old, my mother and my sister come to pick me up. But my sister now is 3.5, thinks she's an only child. I'm 2 years old. And for all I know, I'm a UN baby. I think I'm an only child that's got a life that I'm probably not going to live when I come back to Michigan. And I don't understand what's happening. And so I went into a space where I cried for nearly a month straight. And finally started to adjust to this new place without my grandparents. Now, culturally, Indian families they live in extended communities. They pass kids around all the time. If a grandmother's taking care of them or an aunt's taking care of them, or, cousins all live together in multiple generations of families. So my parents didn't think anything of it. They really didn't think about it. But I will say, when I came back, I was so crushed about leaving my grandparents. And I really didn't know what I did wrong, that all of this pain was coming on me. And so I became quite the people pleaser. And I started paying attention to what I needed to do in my environment to make everybody happy so no one would send me away again.
Oh, so sad.
So I became a people pleaser. And I figured out very early that academics and athletics were things that would get me accolades and appreciation and love. My father, one day I overheard him speaking to a friend saying, "Oh, and the second one was a girl too. All I wanted was a son who would be an engineer."
Oh.
And so I heard it and I thought, well, I can't do too much about the son, but I could be an engineer, And then my mom always spoke about missing her calling to become a surgeon, because her parents back in the day culturally thought, what kind of a mother and a wife are you going to be if you're always on call and you're always running to the hospital? So they didn't let her do that. So she went into biochemistry, but she always had that longing. She even ended up working at a university in a medical school in the biochemistry department. And so I became much more in tune of my outside surroundings so that I wouldn't get surprised again.
Yeah.
And in that effort, I tuned out of me. Oh, really? You want me to be an engineer? Awesome. I'll be a mechanical and biomedical engineer. I'll do all my summer internships. Now am I good enough? Right. And then when I realized medicine and engineering weren't mutually exclusive, I went on to medical school. I mean, I was a bullet train, just like ready to run into a brick wall. Because in the end, when you tune out that much, you lose the early signals to know what's happening. You don't know where you end and somebody else begins. And you definitely don't know what you want. And so at 30, 31 years old, when I'm getting out of school, I'm hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. I've given up my 20s. I found myself just feeling depressed, down. And I was at a retreat in Australia. And it was my first communication and self-awareness retreat that I'd ever gone to. And the facilitator of the retreat handed me a rose quartz stone and said, "If you spoke from the heart, what would you say?" And that was when I said, oh my God, I think I've lived my life for everybody else but me. And I'm supposed to be at the pinnacle of my career, but I'm worried that perhaps we're not getting to the root cause of the problem here. Maybe we're numbing symptoms and we're not healing humans in many regards. And maybe I did this for my mom and my dad. And maybe the bigger question is, who am I? And what do I want? And so, I saw great value in traditional medicine in crisis care. So you get into an accident, you break your leg, you're so happy there's a hospital nearby. You're feeling sick, you need antibiotics, you need something to take care of you in an acute situation. Medicine is phenomenal.
Right.
But when we use short-term solutions of, in our long-term or chronic illness, when we, just bring blood sugar down with insulin each time, but we keep eating the sugar and the tough diet, the diet that's tough on our system. We just use short-term solutions and we keep calling them, we use them over and over again and call it a long-term solution. And it's not. And so what I'd really say is tuning out of my body got me a lot of accolades and a lot of accomplishment. And, my grandparents, the Indian community, my parents, I mean, it's kind of like a party trick. You walk in, you're like, you're an engineer and a doctor? Like, no way. So it's connected me to a lot of people. It's opened a lot of doors. It informs me every day. So I am very grateful that this is the path I took. It was a hard one, but it all started by me tuning out of me and tuning toward, instead of tuning in, I was tuning outward to see what the world wanted from me. And at some point, I'm going to crash into a wall and have to figure out, what do I want?
Yeah, well, it's beautiful that you were able to do so. And I'm going to say at an early age, because 31 is still pretty early to be able to access that intuitive intelligence that you had. And it's beautiful that now you are going on to share this with a much larger community, a much larger population than you would be reaching in a traditional medical facility.
That's
and
true.
My hope is that this is the future of medicine, because of course, I've said this many times, I have a lot of holistic practitioners on my podcast, a lot of people who speak to intuition and how vital and important it is to tune in, because who knows better than we do? No.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, you know how to set a broken bone or someone. I had a hip replacement 21 years ago. Thank goodness for that. But I'm also a big believer in intuitive medicine and holistic doctors who look at the root cause like you do, which is so vital. Now, did you go on after that retreat, your first self-awareness retreat? Did you then go on to work in the emergency room still?
I did. Well, I was hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and I had just, I was about to graduate. So now my job was to pay all of this back.
Yeah.
Which took me about 15 years really, before I could do that. But I got a job. I was still like a good, I was still a good Indian child. I was still like a soldier. I had been trained for this and I was going to go do it. It was all I knew. And so while I was there though, what had cracked open was, is there another way? And it took me time to be able to get to the place where I could understand how all these pieces fit together of burnout, of self-awareness, of communication, and how our inability to communicate with ourselves and each other makes us physically ill. My patients had a lot to teach me. And so I still had work to do. So yeah, I definitely wasn't there. And I certainly didn't have the courage yet to make that big of a leap. It took me about eight more years. And then in 2008, after burning out, after running these experiments of asking 5 questions to get to the root of people's stress and seeing people start coming off a lot of their stress-related medications, I got the courage, and I had the experience and the confidence to say, okay, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to go out and do this on my own.
Yeah, well, the world is glad that you did. And that's sort of a perfect way to transition into your new book, Powered by Me, From Burnout to Fully Charged at Work and in Life.
Yeah. Well, hallelujah for her. She's a girl. She weighs 1.3 pounds. She's 6 inches by 9 inches. Birthing this into the world is one of the things I'm the most proud of. So it took me 20 years. When I burned out, I realized how little I knew about burnout, and I was a trained physician. I realized how little the system knew about it and how much judgment people had about people that burned out, like they couldn't hack it. You can't take it. How much of a failure I felt like, that maybe how come everyone else was still at work and I wasn't? How guilty I felt to be on leave and getting 60% of my pay, while my arms and legs worked. How come I couldn't work? So I was confused, and it was this experience that I detail in the book, I mean, chapter 2 is, the basics of burnout. And I basically tell you the 5 behind the scenes conversations between me and my psychiatrist about how this all unfolded and how I learned about what this is. And ever since then, I've been on a journey to heal myself, to figure out how to get this healing into healthcare, how to help patients, clients, companies do this. And so the last 7 years have been putting it into words. And how do writing a book is a lot harder to me than speaking. If I speak to you, but I don't say something quite right, I can just reiterate what I mean, or kind of like, and I can keep going. But when you write something in a book, it's almost like, okay, was that the best version of the way that you could have said it? Because you get to do it once and they print it and that's how it goes. And so there was something about it that felt more final to me, that you need to get this just right. So I could see some of my perfectionism, excellence, perfectionism tendencies coming in there. But the more I do this, because it's my second book, the first one was on healthy conflict and how our inability to communicate with ourselves and each other makes us physically ill. So it's called Talk RX. But now I'm starting to, as I mature, like allow it's okay if a few mistakes go through. Like, you do your best and you let go. And so what I'm learning as I get older is the paradox and the beauty of it. Like, I used to like no structure, like just let me do what I want to do in the hospital. Don't make me see certain patients by a certain time or whatever. Now I actually understand how structure gives us freedom. I understand how if I want excellence, not perfection, all I have to do is try my hardest and then also be able to surrender and allow the learning. And so now I'm really in the phase of life of appreciating the paradoxes that I had gone to one side of the pendulum on and thought that was like amazing, or control versus surrender. Like, can you have both? Can you do what you can control, and then can you let go of the rest and trust that the universe has your back?
So perfectly said. I love that, where you said you try hard, do your best, and then surrender. And I think I can only speak of myself and other people with whom I have spoken or worked or taught. And we try so hard. We push the pedal to the metal and we go, 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 go. And we're trying and we're trying and we're trying. Instead of giving in, once we have tried our hardest, we push and push and push until we're burnt out, until we can push no more. And then the universe is like, see, you should have.
Well, I mean, I think the discrepancy that happens there is our bodies crave routine and rest. What we get accolades for in the world is to be the best at something, to be a gold medal Olympic athlete, to be $1 billion XYZ. And so when we care, as primal to us as food and water is belonging. And when we're navigating what society thinks success looks like and feels like and is, with our own need for rest and routine and what our biology needs, we come into a little bit of conflict there. And so figuring out that paradox, right? How do I know how to slow down so I can speed up? How do I know how to take care of me while I serve, in the world? And so we get out of balance, and really burning out it's a wake-up call. It's a wake-up call. And when I did Powered by Me, I thought, I want this to relate to so many generations. I wanted to say power because I want people to know it's from within. I want, my generation that I think in many ways has kind of gotten a little power hungry, and, positional power, and CEOs making hundreds of times more than workers and all of these things. I think we've lost balance around power. So that's positional power. But then there's power for the next generation. They know devices. They know if you don't power something up, it's not going to work the next day. So they get so powered by, oh, me? So a way to give them accountability, to give them a little bit of, oh, power, it's something you plug in, but sometimes I got to plug me in. And so it's about accountability. It's about, I really thought a lot about how I would name this, that it could relate across generations and it could speak in metaphor and literally to what I think the world needs now.
Yes, I think you're right. For me, the power is in the tagline, from burned out to fully charged at work and life.
Yeah.
I feel like that is really going to resonate with so many people. You may not work a corporate job anymore. I have a lot of friends who are retired. I also have friends who are not, but we have life, and everybody gets burned out at one time or another. And I am sure that your book gives us all the tips and tricks.
What it does is it demystifies this global overwhelm of burnout. It personalizes it to the reader, and then it gives you powerful, practical tools to heal. So it basically says wherever you are on the spectrum, from burned out to fully charged, the way you figure it out is whether you have a net gain or a net drain of energy on a physical, mental, emotional, social, or spiritual level. And wherever you're having a net drain is where you probably are going to need to adjust your boundaries. Some are going to be too tight, some might be too porous, whatever it is. But it's basically that your life has changed and you're using some outdated strategies continuing right on. And so there's something that needs to be adjusted. And so it's more of a wake-up call than anything else. And I just want people to know that it's just one way that your body, your heart, your mind, your soul are telling you you've outgrown your old version of you, and it's time to, reimagine what's next.
Well, we will end there. It is truly about self-awareness. And when we take the time to look within, to use our intuition, and to actually follow through on what it is that our intuition is telling us to do, then we will step out of burnout and into the next phase, which you are guiding people to do, which is wonderful. So thank you. Well, and Neha, where can people find you? I'll put it down in the show notes as well, but why don't you tell us?
Excuse me. So they can find me at intuitiveintelligenceinc.com or nehasangwan.com, either of those, and you'll get everything you need there.
Okay, great. Again, thank you so much. I am honored to have had you on my podcast today. Since you have been on the Today Show, I feel like, wow. That was
5 minutes of my life.
Well, exactly. And that is one of the reasons I'm like, well, wait, I want to dig deeper. That's why I love listening to podcasts and doing my podcast, because it's not a sound bite. We get to hear a little bit more.
Sure.
And I love it. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. So
you are so welcome.
And sparkling fellow friends who may be suffering from burnout or may not be, I hope that you have learned something today from Neha and realize that your own intuitive intelligence is vital to helping you ignite your spark. So shine on. Thanks for tuning in, as always.